Hi there, this video's review is on the movie Yesterday. So the plot of this movie is this guy named Jack is a musician who's really struggling to write a song, but his love interest Ellie, played by Lily James, encourages him to keep writing because eventually he'll come to something good. But then he gets into a road accident with a bus, and when he wakes up, he wakes up in a weird alternate world where the Beatles never existed because he mentions he mentions that's the thing reminded him of a Beatles song, and of course everyone's like, what's the Beatles? And he Googles, and there's nothing about the Beatles. He tries to look in like record stores and everything, there's nothing about the Beatles. So he then tries to introduce everybody to his certain songs, and he starts to take credit for all the songs. So Jack then becomes a worldwide phenomenon that he because of the certain songs he wrote, which are already existing songs by the Beatles. So Jack becomes a really popular, famous musician in this weird alternate realm, but he slowly starts to think that taking credit for songs isn't really the best thing to do. So he kind of has a bit of a struggle to do that while also trying to get the attention of his love interests. So I thought this was an interesting movie. It was definitely a very unique concept. Like it's not insane. Like it's not like a crazy, super weird fantasy film, but it's definitely unique. Like the idea of an alternate world where a certain famous band doesn't exist. Like it's not it's not like super fantastical to the point where it's silly because it still does feel more down to earth and realistic. So I do like this movie's idea of having like a weird like alternate timeline type movie that's not really a fantasy science fiction film. Well, I guess it is fantasy, but you know what I mean. But it was a interesting idea for a film, and I'm not really a okay, when I say I'm not really a music person, I mean I do listen to songs. Like I literally listen to Apple Music like almost on a daily basis whenever like I'm driving somewhere or if I'm on a road trip or whatever. But like I'm saying, I don't have a passionate interest for it because I'm really not familiar with much artists unless I know like a heck of a lot of their songs. But this was an interesting movie because it was such a bizarre concept that weirdly kind of worked. It does showcase Jack going through a big journey of how he's introducing the Beatles songs to a whole bunch of people, and he even gets a record deal, and he starts becoming a worldwide phenomenon. But it also does kind of have a good lesson that even if people don't believe you, you really shouldn't take ownership of something that you really had nothing to do with. So, because that's the thing, like it's mostly a story about ego. That's probably not a big theme that they were going for, but I think that's probably one of the biggest things that they go through within this movie. I think the whole thing is that Jack doesn't want to have an ego. Like he does really feel good about himself, that he thinks, wow, people think I really wrote the Beatles songs. But then he starts to think, you know what, this probably isn't really a good idea because taking ownership and credit for someone else's stuff, like when people aren't aware of it, like, yeah, it's probably not good for your mental health. It could probably make you too self indulgent. So I think that was kind of the point of this movie. It kind of feels like there was kind of a hidden message within that. And I think it was executed well without making it seem too like weird and silly. Uh, the main guy, I don't know who the main guy was, but I think he's quite good. He's an okay singer, and he was his performance is quite good. Like I actually wouldn't mind seeing him in other stuff. I think he made a pretty likable protagonist. Lily James plays his love interest. I don't remember what her name was. Was it like Jamie? I don't remember what her name was, but uh, I think Lily James is cute. I mean, she didn't have a heck of a lot to do in this movie. She's kind of nothing. I mean, she is does her big characteristic is that she does kind of aspire to be, a big star, but that's pretty much it. But I mean, she and the lead actor do have good chemistry with each other. Kate McKinnon has a supporting role, and Kate McKinnon's usually funny, but in this movie, I didn't think they gave her like a heck of a lot of funny things to say, but she does look like she's having fun as always. That's the thing I love about Kate McKinnon. Like she always has fun no matter what she's in. She'll even if she could put on a goofy voice, she can, be um more down to earth like in this kind of movie where she's just playing like, just a more bubbly woman. So I like that she kind of did a less goofy character in a kind of what's basically as a kind of silly story. And and obviously like for a fantasy film, I guess it's technically kind of fantasy because the whole thing's about an alternate world. But I do kind of like how it still felt like an overall movie, like, and everything felt like something you'd find in the real world. Like, it was a weirdly good balance, and I do think it really deserves more credit for that. I mean, yeah, the plot it's not really when you get down to it. While it is creative, the overall moral of the story is kind of nothing new. It's just don't be too self indulgent and don't give credit to yourself for everything in the world. So it has a good message in it, and it's layered in a creative story. So I do think the movie's really successful in that, even if not all the characters are the most complex. It it's kind of predictable, but I do give it credit that it tried to be a unique story, and especially this was probably made for a lot of music fans because the whole movie's about songwriting and the main character's a musician. So I feel if you're really into music, you'll probably really enjoy this one, or even if you're just a flat out Beatles fan. I mean, oh man, why did I even say that? Who isn't a fan of the Beatles? But yeah, they do sing, like the main guy, he sings a lot of their songs. So there's a lot of callbacks to the Beatles. Like they even mention like a lot of Beatles albums and like even just everything from Flat Out to their crew. So if you're a hardcore Beatles fan, I think there's definitely a lot of good Easter eggs in this movie for you. No pun intended, because today's Easter. But yeah, I think Yesterday, it's an interesting film. It's very quirky, but it has a good plot, and it's very unique while still feeling like a genuine film without feeling too silly. So yeah, it's an interesting film, and if you haven't seen it, I think it's definitely worth a watch. It's not great or anything, but I did really enjoy it. It was a nice surprise. So all right, so yeah, Yesterday, if you haven't seen it, I'd say check it out. I think it's a good movie, so that's my review of Yesterday, so see you all later.